Robert Mugabe, Zimbabwe's first post-independence leader after Zimbabwe was formerly under Rhodesia, died this week aged 95. Now, he died after battling ill health, and his family confirmed his death to the BBC. But Mr. Mugabe had been in hospital in Singapore since April, and he was ousted in a military coup in November of 2017, which ended 3 decades of him in power. Now, he won Zimbabwe's first election after independence and became Prime Minister in 1980. He abolished the office in 1987, becoming President instead. Mugabe's early years were praised for broadening access to health and education for the black people, but his controversial land reform programme sparked an economic collapse, and his latter years were marked by rights abuses and corruption. Now, his successor, Emmerson Mnangagwa, expressed his utmost sadness, calling Mr. Mugabe Zimbabwe's founding father and an icon of liberation. As an interesting side note, he died aged 95, when the national average for a male in that country is 59.6 years. And the overall national average is only 61.4. Democratic presidential candidate, or time waster, I would say, as he's got no chance of winning, Bernie Sanders has been criticised after arguing population control should be part of tackling climate change. Really? Let's get rid of politicians around the world, then that'll solve a lot of problems. The Vermont senator told a TV debate that women in poor countries should have access to birth control, and conservatives said the remark meant the self-described democratic socialist climate change policy was for fewer brown babies, quote unquote. Really? Now, according to the fake UN forecast, the Earth population will rise to 11 billion by 2100. I don't think so. On social media on Thursday, Mr. Sanders was likened to a Marvel movie villain, and Senator Ted Cruz says the Democratic White House hopeful remarks evoked Thanos, the Avengers baddie who kills half the world's population with a snap of his fingers. And the Texas Republican joked, in a surprise move last night, Bernie announced Thanos as his running mate. I wish these people would think before they speak. Further concerns about job losses, and the August jobs report would have been, which was bad enough, would have been a lot worse without the temporary hiring of census workers. The federal government had hired 25,000 temporary workers in preparation for the 2020 census in August, giving the overall jobs gain a big bump. But non-farm payrolls increased by 130,000 last month, which fell well short of estimates for this time of the year of 150,000. Now, employment in federal government also rose by 28,000 in total in August, and the private sector employment was up only by 96,000, the lowest since February. And the weakness largely came from the retail sector, no surprise, which saw a net decline in workers of 11,000 in August alone. Trade, transportation and utilities also lost 11,000 jobs, and mining and logging lost 5,000. There's going to be an awful lot more. I think there was an announcement today, one of the top video game companies is getting rid of over 200 failing companies. A US congressional committee is investigating President Donald Trump now in connection with a potential conflict of interest over military spending at a Scottish airport near his golf resort. This is the latest things, so they can spin something out. And the House Oversight and Reform Committee says expenditure at Prestwick Airport in Scotland has increased substantially since Mr. Trump came into office. Now, the debt-ridden airport has been fighting off closure and is said to be integral to the Trump business, which is in Scotland, which is also loss-making. He has a golf course and resort somewhere in Scotland. And the committee's accusations are detailed in a letter which went to the Pentagon this week, which is dated to June, but was only revealed on a website this past Friday. And the letter requests access to all communications between the US Department of Defense and Trump Turnberry, as well as any related financial records. Now, according to various reports in the US media, the department has not yet complied with the demands, and it has also not commented directly, neither the Trump Organization. Now, citing Defense Logistics Agency records, it is said that the US military had made 629 fuel purchase orders at the airport, totaling $11 million since October of 2017. And it also alleges that certain military personnel have been offered cut-price rooms and free rounds of golf at the Trump Turnberry Resort. And it continued, given the president's continued financial stake in his Scotland golf courses, these reports raise questions about the president's potential receipt of US or foreign government emoluments in violation of the US Constitution, and raise other serious conflicts of interest concerns. That will just roll on. There's been some firings at MIT this week. The head of MIT Media Lab has resigned following allegations that the academic centre has financial ties to the late US financier Jeffrey Epstein. MIT President Raphael Reif confirmed the resignation of Joichi Ito on Saturday following media reports. Mr. Reif added that the university was engaging a law firm to conduct an independent review, and it comes a day after a New York article outlined donations Epstein made and solicited for MIT. The article also alleges that MIT staff sought to conceal the university's relationship with Epstein, who apparently died in prison, allegedly, while awaiting trial for sex trafficking charges. And it said the acceptance of Epstein gifts involved a mistake of judgment, Mr. Reif said. And in an email published by the New York Times, Mr. Ito told University Provost Martin Schmidt that it was he that had made the decision to step down after giving the matter a great deal of thought. Further claims have been made, this time in Iran. The Trump administration has used diplomatic pressure, legal action and economic sanctions, and even cold hard cash to try to get its hands on a hulking Iranian oil tanker that has been spinning its way around Africa and the Middle East for months. And the extraordinary effort to seize the vessel has come to nothing so far, because it landed and delivered. And even a curious State Department offer to make the ship's captain a multi-millionaire fell flat. Things that go on, and how they just fritter away our money on pointless exercises is beyond me. But the cat and mouse game between Iran and the Trump administration over the vessel called Adrian Darya 1 and laden with 2.1 million barrels of oil is emblematic of an increasingly confrontational relationship. And like the fate of the supertanker, which has housed and offloaded all its oil now, the outcome of the US-Iran tensions remains unclear. Now, the Trump administration's efforts to capture the vessel is a small part of its maximum pressure campaign aimed at reducing Iran's oil exports to zero, strangling its economy and forcing its leaders into negotiations with Mr. Trump. Now, Trump is also under investigation for allegations of interference, along with Giuliani, within the Ukrainian government for requesting dirt on Joe Biden from government officials. Quite a list. Next is from a piece about the US Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General has uncovered that Illinois spent at least $4.6 million between 2015 and 17 on people who are already dead. That's a bit like the elections, isn't it? Those uninitiated in the utter lack of competency among leftists may wonder how this could ever happen. How does the state spend money on dead people? Well, a report out of Springfield, Illinois explains it this way. Managed care organisations provide health care to Medicaid patients in exchange for their monthly capitation payments from the state. This means they pay a specific amount at a regular interval for that person, depending on their age, gender and disease. According to Petersburg pharmacy owner Dave Baggio said, and what happened was they continued making these payments for these folks after they had passed away. I wonder who was collecting those payments. 4.6 million of the people of Illinois' money going to dead people. Lebanon we're going to next. The Hezbollah said it this week downed an Israeli drone near its southern border, and earlier the group's leader Hassan Nasrallah vowed that Israel would no longer be allowed to violate Lebanon's airspace with impunity. And the type of AUV, or whether it was a commercial or military-grade surveillance drone, is unknown at this time. The IDF has yet to confirm or deny the accusations, but Israel typically refuses to comment on foreign reports. I wonder why. And Lebanon accuses Israel of last month's botched suicide drone attack in Beirut, which triggered an exchange of fire at the border and forced Syed Hassan Nasrallah to declare a new phase in the conflict, vowing to down any intruding aircraft. There's a few people who seem to like Senator Elizabeth Warren, and she's a bit more progressive, not as bad as some of the other Democrats. Those hopes kind of got squashed this week as she was in talks with the failed presidential nominee Hillary Clinton. Oh dear. A move that's at odds with Warren's progressive image, and some people in her team are not happy about it. Now, the two have been in communication since the Massachusetts Senator announced her presidential run, although both are trying to keep quiet about it, citing several people who wished to remain anonymous, announcing that they were in talks. Bit of a conspiracy, and is the second to last news item before we go into some Q&A. German authorities are investigating this week the mysterious and seemingly inexplicable disappearance of a $330,000 underwater observatory from the Baltic Sea. Now, the sheer size and weight of the subsea station, which consisted of two racks, one weighing 550 pounds and the other, which is 250 kilograms, and the other weighed 100 kilograms, which was anchored at a depth of 22 meters, which is 72 feet. And they have ruled out a massive storm, heavy currents, or large sea creatures as the culprit behind the observatory's disappearance. Both racks, located between the Danish and German borders, were removed with great force from their position, according to the Geomar statement. Now, the Bocknes Eck Observatory was located 1.1 miles off the shore in a restricted area that prohibited civilian or commercial traffic from entering. Final piece of news that came out today. In a direct and urgent call to address gun violence in America, the CEOs of some of the nation's best-known companies have sent letters to Senate leaders today urging an expansion of background checks to all firearms and sales and stronger red flag laws. I guess they are frightened people are going to shoot them when the public find out what they've been up to. Well, you should learn to behave.